Welcome to Afterthoughts. This episode presented to you in black and white as a throwback to the classic podcasts, early podcasts of our days. This is the podcast where we give you thoughts after we have watched something, usually a movie. I'm your host tonight, Ryan King. I'm not sure how much we're going to talk about this movie.
We're going to talk a lot.
This one's going to be an interesting. We're going to talk a lot, but there's not a lot of talking in this movie either. Before we get into that, though, we have our regulars today. John Garcia.
I'm happy to be here, Ryan. I am also glad that Hundreds of Beavers ended up being something I did not expect, as opposed to what I was pretty sure was going to dethrone me bringing up pornography to our recommend or refute.
Sounded like it could.
Yeah.
You just gotta hold out for Pussy Island. Apparently.
Yeah, apparently so. The Zoe Kravitz masterpiece. But yeah, I'm excited to try to figure out how to talk about this movie. I'm sure we'll talk about plenty of things related to it.
Yeah, yep. And joining us as well, Michael Dixon.
John, you clearly did not stay for the post-credit scene of Hundreds of Beavers with just the beaver orgy.
Do they have a similar to Sausage Party? Or just, very...
But way more graphic.
Can only be described as a hungry and a desperate lovemaking. Oh, man.
Yeah, so tonight's episode, we are talking about 2022's Hundreds of Beavers. Which is a great name. It definitely is one of those internet meme type names. And has a good poster to go with it too. I picked this because I kept seeing it pop up on the internet as something that people said was excellent, was great, and was one of their favorite movies they had seen recently or favorite movie they saw in 2022. I watched a little bit of a trailer of it, read a little bit of its Looney Tunes, I guess, is pretty much what people said. Not much more than that to go into it. And I figured we'd give it a shot, just see what it is, since people said it was great. So I was really going in not with anything. It's fucking trip.
Yes, it is.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, this I quite enjoyed it. It sounds like we all maybe quite enjoyed it. We're tipping our hats, but this is a masterclass in how comedy works.
Yeah.
Exactly what makes comedy work in the most basic way. Exactly the cornerstones of how comedy works. Set up, payoff, comedy in threes, bringing a joke back around, all of it is here. If you don't know anything about this movie, it is honestly a throwback to a Buster Keaton or Charlie Chaplin movie in a way. Is pretty much a silent movie. There's music and grunting and sometimes a line or two of dialogue, but essentially a pantomimed silent movie about a cider maker who becomes a fur trapper.
Yep.
Yeah,
he's an Applejack
plot
maker, which I had to look that up. I was like, wait a minute, he makes cereal? What the fuck is going on here? And it turns out Applejack is brandy made from cider. Oh. So it's distilled brandy, or distilled cider.
Distilled cider, yeah, so a little bit better than cider, I guess, yeah.
Or stronger anyway.
Yeah. So beavers destroy his Applejack factory, unbeknownst to him. I think he puts it together later. We then
Not
get
the brightest cat. This lead character was his name John Kayak. John Kayak.
John. Yeah. We get a series of him trying to capture animals to eat or generally survive in the wilderness. Eventually, working with another fur trapper and learning the trade properly. wanting a girl whose dad will, I guess, let you marry
Give
her
her
if you bring
away
in.
for
Yeah, he'll give her away if
trade?
you get enough beavers.
Very biblical. of them.
Except
And
it's
then
like a
we-
reverse dowry situation.
Yeah.
You have to buy it.
He's
and then
just
we
selling
get-
his daughter to the,
To
the
you,
highest
yes.
bidder. Yeah.
for beaver furs that then I guess become beaver hats in England, according to the beaver diagram.
Yes.
in the court segment.
Yes, of course.
The courtroom drama scene in this movie.
The one that I quoted JFK for.
Yes. All of the animals are portrayed mostly as people in suits.
They're all mascot
with a few
suits.
puppets.
That's great.
Yeah, they're all mascot suits
Yeah,
with
there's
a few
a frog
puppets.
Muppet.
Yeah. Yeah, we can go from there. I mean, my idea is
We can- wow.
on this. Yeah, we can go for there. We'll go around and hear what everybody has to say, and then we'll go in. But John, what did you think of Hundreds of Beavers?
I texted my dad about 10 minutes into this movie. You gotta see 100 Beavers, Dad. It's
Hundreds of beavers.
Hundreds
Not
of
100 beavers. That's the prequel.
Well, no,
John.
see, that's what my dad would say to me: is you got to see 100 beavers.
You got to get over here, John. There are 100 beavers in the
100
backyard.
beavers. Yeah. So I texted him like 10 minutes in. You got to see it. It's very much Chaplin, Keaton style. And he was like, okay, what's it on? And immediately went to go find it. And so I'm hopeful that he also will come out of this and be like, oh, that was great. Because I had a fantastic fucking time with this movie. This movie's budget was like $150,000, which is very
Mostly
impressive.
mascot suits, I would imagine.
Actually, the director said that it was like $10K tops that those mascot suits totaled out to. And he was like, the rest of it was probably the booze we needed to actually
Right,
make
yeah.
this movie.
It's important to note they bought 6 beaver costumes.
No way. Oh, man.
Yes. You need to go watch like how they made the movie. Like that's something
There are
we definitely need to
half-dozens
talk
of
about.
us.
Yes, that's something we definitely need to talk about. But it's amazing how they used After Effects and digital effects to cover for so many things. Yeah, we'll have to get into that.
And having seen the movies I've seen, like independent filmmakers trying to do whatever with green screen, I can safely say this movie will fucking knock your socks off with how well it is composed. And they did the black and white filter for like 2 reasons. You kind of get net wins with it. And I appreciated watching it through because it did harken back to the old kind of silent era, despite not being a silent film. It's a semi-talkie, I guess that's what we'd call it. I don't know. Like they were able to obscure a lot more of the like bad effects. Like there's so many cool puppet like shots in this. Like they have a heart like shaped box thing that's full of worms in it that they open up and they're all like little happy worm puppets, but it's like clearly like all of their hands are underneath that, like fingers in, just making them wiggle, and it looks so fucking cool. It's a testament to how beautiful practical and CG can merge, doing like visual effects over things. So I obviously, and any of my recommend or refutes and talking about other movies, champion like independent films, even if they're made by Neil Breen. Sometimes I will champion them because it's interesting to see somebody, or Craig Denny. It's interesting to watch somebody try. And here it is, a bunch of friends who clearly wanted to do something, had a vision for it. They not only tried, but they succeeded, and it resulted in like so many laughs and so many fucking great jokes. It's just jam packed with gags in it. I would say the only other thing that I enjoyed as a byproduct of this was watching this Good Morning America clip where the news anchor or whoever it was, the personality, was asking questions to the director and basically said, so after this, are you gonna like make like a real movie, like a Scorsese movie or something? It's the most backhanded question. And the director was like, I made a real movie. This is a real movie. He's very sweet about it and he handled it well. And then that anchor clarified, he meant, are you gonna try to do like drama or is this your genre? Which is still like an interesting question, but it was just funny to see that guy sweat for a little bit. And I was like, yeah, this dude succeeded. Come on, man. we're good here. This also had a lot of familiar songs. Like I know that I feel like there's some like original score element to it. And the sound effects as well. Like the Foley's great. It's one of those that like it definitely brings everything to life with how goofy it sounds. Really like lands the notes and the hits. But also just full of songs that I've heard before, and I liked the use of the music and was like, oh, this is kind of pleasant. They nailed what each of these was intended for. Anytime that our hero is thinking about something, and it kind of brings in that like do 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 do. I was like, yeah, perfect. That's a great usage of that song. Anyways, Hundreds of Beavers. I love Hundreds of Beavers. It was great. I loved watching it, and I would watch it again in a heartbeat. So, those were the things I liked about it. Dixon, what about you?
Nice. Yeah, so John and I were trying to watch this movie together, and our schedules didn't work out, and so we both watched it separately, alone, by ourselves, and I was like, oh man, this would have been so much more fun watching it with somebody else.
Yeah.
I still had a fucking blast watching this movie. The first thing I thought of was Looney Tunes, and I felt like the whole thing was like just a massive feature-length Wile E. Coyote bit, and it was just so fucking good, so innovatively done. And I think that combination of practical effects and CGI and creative editing is just it's so cool how it all comes together. Like there's that scene early on when, for some reason when the beavers destroy his Applejack distillery, he's just like all of a sudden like in the cold wilderness with no home anymore. And I'm like, I don't know how this happened so fast, but he's like trying to survive and make a fire, and he like picks up a piece of wood and he can't light because it's soaked in water, and he like wrings out the log.
Yes.
And it's like a stuffed log, and then he wrings it out and he hits it against a tree and it's hard, and he's like, oh great, and then he just lights it and starts making a fire. And like there's a lot of fun gags like that are creative
like the wind
editing,
changing its direction.
yeah, the wind changing while he's trying to start a fire. There's just so many great bits in this incredible physical comedy. There's all of the like physics doesn't work that way jokes that you would get in a Wile E. Coyote bit, where the gravity goes in the wrong direction, or whatever the case may be, where you think the main character thinks that he's got it figured out, he's got the beaver, but the trap doesn't spring, and he walks over to it and then it springs on him, stuff like that, or like the icicles falling out of the tree that he thinks are gonna stab the beaver, but it like turns and comes and stabs him, and just stuff like that. Is like, this is really funny, and it really made me want to go back and watch some Looney Tunes shorts, which I have not done yet, but I probably will in the next few days at some point. But yeah, I had a really good time with this. It's an hour 48, and that seems like going into it, I was like, this is really good off the bat, but this is going to get old. Like, I'm going to get tired of this after a while. And I didn't at all. The entire time I was having a blast. They keep escalating things. It's funny to see him kind of learn as a fur trapper as he's going and kind of get better, but still have the animals kind of fuck with him in certain instances. And then, the beavers are building this massive building in the background, and you don't really
fortress.
know what's going on but he continues to pass by it on the map every time he runs around the forest trying to find animals. And, he always comes to that one spot where there's just some weird shit in the snow, and he's like, I don't know. And then just keeps going. And like that ends up coming back at the end. There's just so many good bits. I thought it was really great. I was very surprised by this movie. I was expecting some sort of kitschy thing. I was like, oh yeah, okay, they're all dressed in mascot costumes. This is going to be like a Willy's Wonderland type of thing, or something where it's kind of trying to be tongue in cheek, but I wasn't expecting it to actually be good. And I was like, holy shit, this is like one of the best things I've seen this year. And it is actually a 2024 release officially. It premiered at Fantastic Fest here in Austin at Alamo Drafthouse in 2022. And then it's been on the festival circuit for over a year, and finally officially released in 2024. And this is my second favorite movie of the year so far.
That's
after
amazing.
Kinds of Kindness.
Yeah.
I liked this better than Dune Part 2.
It's going to be an eclectic year.
Yeah. I thought it was just an incredible piece of filmmaking and one of the funniest things that I've seen in a really long time.
Yeah. I mean, we can either talk gags or we can talk.
This episode is just going to be. You remember that one scene? Oh, that was funny.
Yeah. Remember?
Pretty much.
Remember when the rabbit was falling out of the sky and the shadow was over the ground, but then it hit the spike instead?
You mentioned the he walks by and he sees the things and he doesn't know what they are, and then it comes back around. There was actually like late in the movie, essentially when it's all coming together, I had that thought and I was like, what were those fucking things he walked by? And is that coming back up? And then almost like within 2 minutes, it was like, oh, here's exactly what those things were. And it's just like absolutely, the longer it makes you wait on something, the more ridiculous it is.
It's kind of wild because to me, this film is like a labyrinth of jokes. Like it lays a thread through certain parts. Like by the end of the movie, you're going to go through every corner of this labyrinth. You will know every piece of this weird fucking madness. But for now, you're just laying the thread to show you where you've kind of been so far and mark like, oh, there's like open areas here we could go, whatever. Like we see at one point, I forgot, like they set up so many things and then they give you enough time to breathe and forget about it. Like the banana peel is, I think, an excellent example where like initially they have this banana peel out in the middle of the fucking ice. And you think that it's going to be he's going to slip on it or it's just setting it up for later. But actually it's part of a larger trap. And then like they give you enough time in between when you first see it and when you get to see it again that I was like, my brain was just like, oh, banana peel, it's probably going to pay off now. And it like still does, but doesn't in the way. And I was like, oh, fuck. Okay. This movie is still ahead of me in so many ways. It was
just like so inventive with so many of the gags, like that it stays fresh. Like it constantly is throwing out new stuff and new gags and escalating. Because there definitely is a lot of, you mentioned the Wile E. Coyote. There certainly is a huge chunk of this movie that is those like Wile E. Coyote setup and payoffs.
Yeah.
But probably about the time those start getting stale, we get into just the complete off the rails, unhinged end chunk of this movie, right? Like
it was like the equivalent of like The Thief and the Cobbler. I don't know if y'all remember the ending of that movie where there's just this gigantic machination that like the thief like slides through and around and is constantly falling through like Rube Goldberg segments. I was reminded of that by the Tower of Babel that these beavers were building. It's just like amazing machinations. Some wild shit.
Yeah, I mean there's just so much absolute insanity in this. I lost my shit at the first appearance of the Sherlock and Watson beavers. It's like all the other beavers are just like animals, right? That are just like out for food, or it's, you know, dudes in beaver mascot costumes, but like they're not smart. They're just beavers, right? Yep. And then all of a sudden there's a Sherlock Holmes and a Watson beaver in like a Sherlock Holmes cap smoking a pipe and like finding all of these murdered beavers and trying to investigate what's going on. It's just like, I lost my mind when I first saw that. I was like, okay, this is just so fucking creative. This is hilarious.
And when he first comes across all the beavers and the huge group is like going and building stuff, in the corner there's like two beavers with like surveying equipment. And
that's right. They're doing the survey.
Right. Yeah. And again, just like a quick throw. Like there are so many like little throws in. This is a movie I feel like you can come back and rewatch and enjoy as well. Even if you know the gags, you will really enjoy it. And there's so many gags. There are parts that you kind of probably have already forgotten a little bit that you'll go back and will laugh at again because you're like, I forgot about that.
They just overwhelm you with like so much.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way you could remember everything in this movie.
No, it's not possible.
Each time you come out, you probably have something that you enjoyed that you could talk about, but you'll never remember. Like I'm forgetting in between moments. Like I forgot about the snow bunnies that the dude builds at the beginning that have the gigantic breasts.
That he uses his bait for other rabbits to come out so he can kill them.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man.
And then he makes himself like a companion snowman to fish with and gives that one boobs and just like
he's trying to like hold it and it just disintegrates. And
one of my favorite gags was the rabbit footprints that he follows forever through the snow. And he sees like there's one rabbit and then two come together and they're going, and then there's just like a bunch of rolling around in the snow that's just like the rabbits fucking, and then there's like little rabbit footprints going beside them. And then one of the rabbits goes away and joins up with a different rabbit's footprints. You're like, oh no, they got divorced and this one went with another with another family. Like
Yeah, there's like a scene where for like 2 seconds he rubs a rabbit's foot before he does something, and it's like after the rabbit was eaten by something else.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those moments where I was like, oh, yeah. He's about to do something dangerous. He needs luck.
There's so many instances of him like setting a trap to catch a rabbit, and then like all the other animals get to the rabbit first. He can never actually get any food.
That's where like this is the epitome of like comedy edging, where it just like it is taking you, and every small step takes you to this grander and grander absurdity that you're going to get to eventually. And it's epitomized in like everything visually that the film does, from first there's one rabbit to now there are 2 rabbits to he's building 2 rabbit like dummies to like try to attract them to there's a box with this on it. Now it has this other bait in it. And even like the weird dude who's the shopkeep, who has this like video game-esque scoreboard of how many skins he needs to trade in, and it gets marked off as he goes through it. It gets like bigger and bigger traps and whatever else. Like just everything visually and comedically leads you to this like there's some grand payoff at the end, and it's the fucking beaver tower that you keep seeing built in the background, bigger and bigger each time. Which starts from humble logs, very humble log beginnings. And that dude getting the shit kicked out of him by beavers, which is a great
so many
sequence.
times.
Just great. But yeah, I was actually kind of curious about that. So like from the perspective of this feels like Looney Tunes to it's a Buster Keaton kind of Chaplin thing. I don't know if y'all had the same feeling, but while I watched this, I was in disbelief that a movie like this could be made in 2024 and have me so, or like released in 2024 and have me so spellbound by what it is doing. Because I always think of Buster Keaton or Charlie Chaplin as like they're universal, they're funny, but it's antiquated humor in a way. Like I feel like comedy's evolved. At one point, Ryan went on some tear at like a previous company where we worked, and he drew this gigantic whiteboard of the comedic procession of like jokes from lowbrow to highbrow to like all the way back around. The spectrum
of comedy.
Yeah, the spectrum of comedy. And so did y'all have a similar sense of like, my God, these crazy bastards, they're doing it. They're actually getting away with this. Or is it one of those things where you're like, no, I mean, it makes sense. Like it's timeless. It is a timeless kind of humor.
I think that humor is kind of timeless. I'll say I'll caveat a little bit. It is interesting, like you mentioned earlier, it's like what, an hour 48, hour 46, something like that,
48,
right?
Yeah.
48. That's a lot longer than Chaplin films. Or Keaton's even shorter. And a lot of those silent era, like big hits, even like somewhat into the talkie, like Oliver and Hardy, that ran before other movies are short. They're real short, and they kind of have their gag or a couple of gags, and they get to them. There's not as many there where I feel like there's these long setup and payoffs. There's definitely setup and payoff, but not from something like the very beginning until like the absolute end. Mm-hmm. There's not necessarily as many running gags. I think that's a thing that has grown in comedy, that the use of running gags and the like. Something like Arrested Development is a masterclass in running gags because they take them and mutate them. Like the running gag changes into a different running gag as you go. That's certainly not something you saw back in the day. The pacing aspect has shifted, and I think that's just as audience expectations of the media has changed. So we went back as a family recently and watched some Oliver and Hardy. And it's funny.
It's Laurel and Hardy?
What did I fucking say? Oliver one of his
company?
names.
It's Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. Laurel and Hardy.
Oliver and Hardy, it's just a solo act. He plays both roles.
Yeah, Laurel and Hardy.
He has a Jim Cotta mask on the back of his
Laurel's
head.
been long dead. I'm just trying to pay the bills.
Yeah, Laurel and Hardy.
Yeah.
And it's slower to get to the comedy. And there are like payoffs, but it also like has to pause on certain things to kind of let you understand that it's funny.
Joke?
Yeah. I think because the media is so new, it's having to also teach you how to know something is happening or how something is funny, right? Like, is this still early film?
Yep.
Where here it's like they're expecting the audience coming in getting a lot of, right, already knowing a lot of how these things work and how the setup and payoff is. I would say like lengthwise, this is much more like a Marx Brothers film. Like those movies have that longer and kind of constant joke, their pacing is better. I think their pacing fits a little bit more to a modern aesthetic. But it makes me think back to like, I went back and I read really, really early newspaper comics. And it was interesting seeing as those evolved to like give you what today you understand as a gag in that medium. It's like Cats and Jammer Kids is like the big one that like so much shit, including Looney Tunes, owes to like how we show something, how we show comedy. And like a good example is like they did the like someone falls over when somebody says something, right? And like one of the characters is like, and they fall over, and it's like that's the punch line. Because it like didn't exist before. But they also had like smell lines coming off of something, right? To like tell you that it smells, right? Like they created these things. And I think that's when you look back at like Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin, they were kind of like creating the medium too. And
Also
so
doing their
now
own
we've
stunts,
done it so
which
much.
was-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some crazy stunts. Now we kind of have that to ape on. This movie still takes all of that and still provides fresh bits on it. I think that's where it really is interesting, is to kind of use all of those beats and just jam even more on top of it and still stay fresh and on top of it. Almost more like Monty Python's like a good example of like just constantly throwing shit at you, right? And that's kind of the more modern.
And I think one of the ways that this movie like improves upon those works, like I've seen a handful of Chapman and Keaton films, I've seen a Harold Lloyd film, and like this was way more entertaining and engaging to me than anything I've seen from them. And I think it's because of like modern editing that, you know, that was difficult to do physically on film at the time, and to be able to do all that digitally and create all these effects with a lot less time and a lot less cost, just made it all flow together in such a compelling way. And using small bits of CGI here and there to supplement the practical and to supplement the editing just made it all flow together in a really impressive way. We're just like, Chaplin didn't have the ability to do something like this.
Yeah. It is pushing, I wouldn't say it's like consumer grade, but it is more accessible, visual effects, more accessible, like practical and kind of synthetic filmmaking to really emphasize like, hey, here's the indie point. I've always thought about like indie films like this, like at this budget, 150K, I think of that as being, look, you're either going to get like a few plaster molds that you're going to make a horror movie out of, and you're going to get a lot of corn syrup that's red, and that's your horror movie, or you're going to shoot a very stylized A24-esque drama because you spent all that money on like focal length lenses that'll give you this nice cinematic feel. I never once, for some reason, thought somebody should just make a movie and put a black and white filter on it and have like really well-paced and timed practical mixed with CG sort of effects. Like anytime that there's a scene where an icicle is spouted or an icicle is used, it's a licensed like image of an icicle that they just fucking cropped out and then repeated several times and used. Whether a character sneezes it out or it falls out of a tree, it is always the same icicle.
The sneeze icicles are pretty good.
Yeah, it's great, and they do a great job kind of using it to the fullest effect possible. And like, if it was in color, you would know, and it would be distracting. But because it's black and white, it kind of masks it. Whereas like
they also put that filter on it. That
the grain
helps.
filter that helps, which
makes it look like it was shot on like 8mm or something.
Yeah, which like sometimes it works and sometimes it, like we've talked about, you know, they cloned Tyrone, has like too much grain for what it's trying to go for, and it seems like it's hiding something. But here it's like perfectly used. It's not distracting. It lends to the aesthetic. And it's also interesting just from like the contrast of it is shot in some scenes shot in the snow, some scenes on green screen, and it all blends together really nicely because they have the right imagery. They took photos of where they needed to do whatever they're going to do with it. So
yeah, there's also a lot of just straight animation in this too, like not just like CGI effects, but like legit animation that's used to, you know, have trees falling over or different things like that works super well.
They do like multi-frame, like they'll do like stop frames for some things. They'll do hand animated for others. They use like the whole spectrum of what they can to get away with these gags.
Including mascot costumes.
Yes, mascot costumes, which was probably, I wouldn't say it's like the biggest hurdle for me to get over, but it's definitely one of those things that took adjustment when I was like, okay, I've only seen mascot costumes used in Trigger Happy TV, the prank show that Comedy Central used to run, and nothing else except for sports. And so
we love Mr. Met, don't we, folks?
Man, could you imagine hundreds of gritties? Oh man, you'd never win.
Man, that's just a horrifying nightmare.
Yeah.
So this movie can really only be pulled off because of the way that they shot it and the editing. Like we can't not talk about that, and then the inclusion of digital effects to kind of cover all of it. This is it's interesting to say this movie is filmed entirely in front of green screen on location.
Yes. That's correct.
Right? It's kind of interesting. And what they would do is they would have the actor and then they're in front of a green screen, but they're out in the wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
Then they would film the background so for every shot, the background almost always is some other background, especially when we have like close-ins on the character, which creates this even more like cartoony disconnect thing as well. And then they would also like green screen shoot the character, like if it's a beaver, the beavers, or whatever, like, you know, not the snowmen aren't there, but whatever the snowmen are going to be on. Like everything was filmed independently so they could edit it all together and make it work. And so if there's 10 beavers in a scene, they just filmed 10 different times the guy in the beaver costume standing there. Or sometimes they duplicate. Like you can see it where they all move exactly the same, but it's fine. Like it just fucking works, right? Because of the way that all this is. And by the time you're, 10 minutes into this movie, you've already completely given in to like, okay, I get it. This is zany, right? We don't have to really be concerned with how any of this like quote works. It's just, we're having fun with them, having fun making this movie. I love how many times they left shit in that was bloopers that they could have reshot, that they were just like, it's funnier this way. Yeah. Where like a fucking Sherlock Watson's like mustache falls off, or you can tell like when he's like sledding and aiming to like crash into a beaver, and they like legit crash and like drop shit, and they just keep it in. They fall over, they keep it in. Like it just adds to the fun of all of it.
So the like those moments, I was actually really impressed by the layering that they do when they have this green screen, because again, to bring up Neil Breen, I talked about it on a Recommend or Refute. I saw Neil Breen's latest movie a while, like Cade, the Tortured Crossing, and he does the same thing that these filmmakers do, where they just shot everything. He shot everything on a green screen and he layers it all in, but he does it against it's against the grain effectively. Anytime that he superimposes people that he's taken out of a green screen image or a prop or any of that, he does it against like a stock photo background. He doesn't try to shoot on location and like, I think that that's a novel way to approach it. Is, we talk about Disney's big fucking volume. That's that gigantic screen they use now to shoot all their movies. And how like that gives the realistic lighting of the area that you need to be in, and the power of a green screen all in one thing.
Just fucking go outside.
Yeah,
dear God.
And here you have like an indie filmmaker that is like, let's go pop up a green screen in the area that we want the lighting in, and let's shoot it this way and get it practically so that we have snow covered on the ground and the characters actually trudging through this and walking around, and then let's do it a few different times and let's be spatially aware. Like there's so much premeditation in this film that it is, one, on a level you can watch it and just enjoy it because it's funny, it's great, but on like a technical level, it's really impressive to see how they rendered each of these. I'd love to see the storyboards. I'd love to see what all of these drawings of these gags look like, because there has to be so many of them, like so many note cards or something.
Oh yeah,
that has this. Yeah. But yeah, it's so impressive.
I want to talk about one of the bits that I really enjoyed, which is kind of a running gag in the movie where, like this character is really stupid and they show him learning very basic things as the movie goes on. And he's like encountering wildlife and learning what it eats, and he starts keeping a list of like the food chain, basically.
He has
and
that complicated,
it.
what is it called? Like the trap line?
Yeah.
It's got this other dude, this trapper that's way better than he is like mapped it down to like the pinpoint precision of where everything is. And he like can't read that. He just goes, yeah, fuck it. Like erases
the entire thing. Yeah. It starts mapping things out cartoonishly. And, but the like food chain list, I just like, as he goes through the movie and he learns like, frogs eat flies, and he like writes it down on his thing. And I just kept taking pictures of it on the screen as the movie was progressing. And I have a picture of the final food chain, which is just titled bait. And
that's right. Yes.
Apparently frogs eat flies and skunks eat frogs. Dogs eat squirrels and wolves eat dogs. That doesn't make any sense to me. Rabbits eat carrots and raccoons eat rabbits.
Sure.
Very confused by that one. I've never seen a raccoon
when they're
eat
dead.
a rabbit.
Raccoons will eat anything. If it's like dead, they'll give it a shot.
Oh, I guess. Yeah. And I guess we don't see a raccoon eat a live rabbit.
No.
But they like fucking pick it to the bone, except for that foot.
Yeah. Every time.
Yeah. And then beavers apparently just really love shit. Unclear why that is, but the shit has to be
oil?
painted with, well, it's like beaver like guts that are put into the castor oil can. So I guess they just like the smell of their own shit. I don't know, but like they're just like you just put out pieces of shit and you paint them in beaver guts, and that attracts the beavers. And then I don't know. It's just very odd. It's just
they also like to eat crosses. That was one of the.
Oh, that's right. He like learned that they like crosses, so he started making crucifixes to learn. He puts a crucifix under that box.
Yeah.
Oh my god, just so fucking wild.
I think
we learned that the beavers are obsessed with shit because they have a whole bathroom where they ride on a swing and take a shit and try to hit a target.
Yes. Oh, that's incredible. And there's that gag where he like gets like one of his traps flings him halfway across the map and he lands in the middle of that target and he's like, oh no, and he gets wide-eyed and like shit just splatters all over him.
And then he has that woodpecker that always comes in and hits his head.
Yeah, whenever he does the like cartoon whistle with it, like when a wolf sees a hot girl in a Looney Tunes
a cat
cartoon.
whistle, a cat call,
a Tex Avery cartoon.
And so he starts using that to get him out of tricky situations by having a lever that the woodpecker will hit on. It's one of those movies that we've talked about it before on other films where it inspires you to think about other gags. And one gag that I really would have loved to have seen, and maybe I just don't remember it because there were so many good ones, is that he put the cross on that box and that he came back and that he had caught like a padre beaver.
Oh,
it would have been great. And he confuses it and thinks that all the beavers, again, he like doubles down. It's like, oh, it's going to work for everything.
They could have like a Hasidic Jewish beaver walk by and like just keep going.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, does a little like glance and then walks off.
Yeah, so many great gags that could still be packed into this movie of already great gags that are jam-packed. It's amazing.
There's also that, like when he makes the crucifix, that's before he's able to purchase the little tiny-ass pocket knife.
Oh, yes, of course, the pocket knife he threatens.
It's like 2 inches long. And he's just cutting things with his teeth. And he just takes 2 logs, sticks them together in the form of a cross, and then just like chews it, and all of a sudden it's one single piece with like the body of Christ on the cross.
Man. Yeah, just great. Like perfect use of non sequiturs, all that. I mean, it's funny because going into this, I didn't look at the trailers, Ryan. I didn't read anything really about it. I was like, I'll just go in blind because I've seen a few friends on Letterboxd log it. For some reason, they either never reviewed it or they only gave it they gave it like a 4.5 to 5 stars. And I was like, okay, like this must be a good movie, but also I don't know how good it could be. Like when neither of them are saying anything about it, nobody's saying anything. But when I watched it, I understood that it doesn't need you to say anything about it. You just need to show people that it was good. So
and that's why we're wrapping up this podcast.
Yep, that's right. This episode is over. Puts up on the stove. But yeah, like it made so much sense to me, and I was like, hey, and it kind of made me inspired too because. One, we've already talked about Buster Keaton, talked about Charlie Chaplin, like this history of comedy and everything. But for me, I've always been like, hey, anywhere that vaudeville can get in, anywhere that there's slapstick, I'm always interested to see it done right because I know what slapstick looks like when it's done wrong. It looks like an Adam Sandler film. Like any of those have slapstick and it's never funny and it never lands because it's unearned humor. But here at every turn, dude gets hit in the nuts. Dude gets like kicked over this fence, gets pelted, like pummeled by beavers, gets beaver pelts and still gets somehow pummeled by them. Like it doesn't matter. It just does a great job of setting up gag way down the line and then delivering it each step of it. It's again, can't sing those praises enough. But now I understand why when I look at Letterboxd, I see what I see. Like, yeah, it's overwhelmingly charming and fun.
Yeah. I mean, this is possibly the best physical comedy that I've ever seen. It's like...
Damn, that's a statement.
Right up there with like Tobias in Arrested Development. It's like, that's the bar, right? Hundreds of Beavers and Tobias in Arrested Development. David Cross is just incredible. Like the physical comedy bits in that are so good. But yeah, I mean, it's just... it's just so unique. There's nothing really like it that's been made in the past 80 years. I don't know, 60, 70 years. Like it's definitely something that like it kind of demands to be seen because it's so unique.
Yeah.
It's just like screaming out like it's just something that you're not going to get anywhere else.
That kind of brings me to my like next question about it, which is like, where do you go from here? Like,
Thousands of beavers,
thousands,
John.
obviously. Hollywood demands thousands of beavers.
Or you follow this movie, The Beavers Go to the Moon, and you set the next one in space. Hundreds of beavers in space. And you get Nicolas Cage to star because that would be fucking incredible. If Nick
I was
Cage
going to say,
in this.
like, from here, I feel like the only way that they could take a Hundreds of Beavers sequel of any kind, which the director, what's his name? It's Chris, I don't remember, Chris Minchell, something like that.
I don't think that's his name.
It's something close to it. Hold on. I have it here on me.
His name is Mike Cheslick.
Yeah, close enough. Mike Cheslick, yeah, he said that they're working on a secret project that has something to do with martial arts, which I'm like,
oh, okay.
When it's an indie film and it has to do with martial arts, you're in for a time. We'll see how that goes. Because that I feel like is an even trickier tightrope walk than this might have been, which is weird to say.
John, did you ever see The Art of Self-Defense?
I did, and I did enjoy that.
Yeah.
Great.
That's how you do an indie film about martial arts.
It's just one of those things where like maybe it's recency bias and I just can't picture anything not being done in a similar style to this.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like, I have no idea what they mean when they say it's a martial arts film. But for me, if you ever did a Thousands of Beavers, you would have to do it in a mockumentary style where any of the shots of the Thousands of Beavers film production had Nicolas Cage and the moon, but the rest of it is this character. Basically you have to make the director a character. Mike Cheslick has to be his own character in it, trying to make this happen and totally succumbing to like the vices of Hollywood or some shit like that.
Get meta.
Get meta. That's kind of the only way I could see you taking this. And if you watch any of his interviews, they're delightful too, because he rails against Hollywood. He's like, I think that all the actors in Hollywood are cowards. None of them would ever take a pratfall seriously. And like that kind of shit where he's like, you're afraid to fall down in the snow and look stupid. It's great. He does it in a way that's cheekily inflammatory. And so, I feel like that's the next step. Just
he's got to work with Nick Cage.
Inflate his ego and make him work with Nick Cage. Why not? But yeah, like seriously, do y'all see any other option? Like, I feel like anybody else who comes after this, you got to wait like several years, if that, to try to do something similar if you wanted to. Like, this isn't going to be a boom of silent films coming back, right? I feel like that just wouldn't last.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I think that the charm and uniqueness is what really makes this work. I also doubt even the same filmmakers could pull off, like, I can't think of it. Yeah, I can't think of like a bad joke in this, and that might be because you're inundated with so many good jokes that if there was one, it just sort of passed me by and I've forgotten about it.
Yeah.
But I do really think I think everything in this was great. Like everything in this was funny, and there were things
Yeah.
that were uniquely funny, like newly funny, in an anticipation way. Like I did not expect that.
So they made
And
a
I-
movie before this in 2018
Yeah.
that I had never heard of, and now I want to see. It's also in black and white, called Lake Michigan Monster, and I watched the trailer and it looks absurd, like people hunting for a sea monster in Lake Michigan. And it's so the lead, Ryland Brixton Cole Twos, that's one person, 4 names.
Amazing.
Yeah, he was the co-writer with Mike Cheslick on Hundreds of Beavers. They co-wrote Lake Michigan Monster, and Ryland Brixton Cole Twos starred in that and directed it. So they seem to be kind of a filmmaking team.
Duo, yeah.
And maybe they're kind of trading director credits. I'm not sure
Ryland
how
Brixton
that's
Cole
working.
Twos is also our lead in Hundreds of Beavers.
Yes, also the lead in Hundreds of Beavers. So it seems like they've done this kind of thing now twice, like a black and white, low budget, over the top, funny creature movie. So I'm very interested to watch that, and I would be curious to see if they keep iterating on that like very odd subgenre.
Yeah. I mean, I can think of comedy it's tricky if they fall into the trap of doing the same thing, because
Yes.
it shouldn't be the same thing. I think it's almost somewhat a mistake if they try to kind of stay in the same genre, so to speak. I think they can use some of the same aspects or the kind of the way they do comedy. But if I think about it, I'm like, Mel Brooks, right, has been able to kind of pull off the same thing a few times that you would think wouldn't work and that other people have tried and doesn't quite work. The Zucker brothers, hits and misses, but I mean, for Mel Brooks too, honestly, right, it's a tough thing to balance that particular style of comedy. Like I mentioned, the Marx Brothers, they have a few films, some better than others, but two really really good ones, right? And like Duck Soup and
I actually hated Duck Soup. That's the only one of theirs I saw, and I was like, I can't watch anymore. This is bad. I can't do it.
All right, if you don't dig Duck Soup, then don't watch the other Marx Brothers, honestly.
Yeah.
But in their time, they were successful multiple times at that same thing. And again, like, I think that the creative control in all those instances of who I listed to let them make what they wanted to make and not feel like they had to follow it up. Like Mel Brooks talks about Blazing Saddles, and they were like demanding more Blazing Saddles, and he was just adamant that he didn't want it to happen. He didn't want there to be more. And in fact, they had like negotiated in his contract to make a Blazing, either a sequel or a TV show. I don't remember if the contract said they could do either one, but they ended up doing the TV show. And he was like trying really hard to keep it from happening. And they ended up making the TV show only out of like the contractual obligation to try to do it. And it just didn't work, and they never released it.
Yep.
Nice.
Because you can't go back to that well. It makes no sense to even continue that same thing. And then we talked about Black Dynamite, and John, you said the follow-up.
The Outlaw
Again,
Johnny Black. Yeah.
Yeah, they tried something else. Like I appreciate like moving to the side. But it felt like I guess you were saying they didn't quite know what made Black Dynamite work enough to do it again.
Yeah, they did like a Boss parody combined with maybe a Buck and the Preacher, and then they just didn't really follow through on packing it with good gags. It was all a lot of like flat humor that just kind of fell. So they just didn't know what made. Yeah, it was that lightning in a bottle. Like Black Dynamite was charged by a lot of blaxploitation films. It was an homage to an entire genre, and so it drew on the entire inspiration of that. Whereas Outlaw Johnny Black drew on like 2 films essentially, and probably some ancillary things around it. But here you have something that's drawing on the entire genre of slapstick, on what's been established before, on what seems to work, and then using modern technology and the ability to have callbacks. And hell, I'm sure like even down to the smallest technological advancement, like the ability to store your notes and storyboards digitally or something, helped keep so much better track of like all these fucking tangles in this weaving web of gags. that it just supercharged it. But anyways, yeah, that's you're probably right. This is like a lightning in the bottle situation that they should not try to capitalize on, and it really doesn't seem like Mike is trying to do that. We're on a first name basis, he and I.
Yeah.
Of course.
How many name basis are you on with the lead actor?
Only a 4-name basis.
Every one of them, Ryland, Brixton, Cole, twos. Every time.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm on a much more personal level with Mike. He lets me call him Chris sometimes.
I'm on a 3-name basis with Ryan, Brixton, Cole. We're working on it. We're getting toward that.
Someday you'll get to that commitment of 4.
Yeah. No. You work your way back.
That's
as we
when you
know each other
Brixton.
more. I reduce the number of names.
Of course.
Yeah, it's a more formal engagement now. But
I see.
Yeah.
But would you ever get to know like a 0 basis where you just say you or
What's up, bruh?
Yeah. That's exactly it.
Yeah. I think they should do whatever it is they want to do next, right? I think it's the creative freedom. I do think the restriction of budget also helps. And I've seen, some directors who talk about having too much of a budget ended up kind of ruining what they were doing, and that having a tighter budget forced them to make better decisions or do more with what they had.
If they had a big studio budget behind this and they made like all of the beavers like really intricate CGI, this would suck. This would be terrible.
Yeah, be fucking awful. Unless they were going to do hundreds of beavers that were all different styles. Like you have a Jim Henson Muppet, and you have one that's hand drawn, and you have a CG one, and you have some other shit, and it's just fucking weird at different times. Sure, why not? But that's besides the point. Studio money always means studio notes.
Right.
And it's been proven time and time again. You don't want those.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I think that there is more space with satire to hit other genres, to hit other things, right? Kind of what we're talking about. So like,
slapstick will always be slapstick. Like,
slapstick
no
is slapstick, right? And kind of like just doing another slapstick, it might be hard to hit the same thing, but with a satire, you can kind of like bounce to different ways to do it, right? I'm thinking of like going from This Is Spinal Tap, like that guest has managed to like hit other genres and other things and kind of still be able to explore that type of style, the mockumentary. Or
are you
like
suggesting that they do their next movie about a dog show?
Yeah, actually, maybe. Yeah, let's do just as, and okay, there could be something if the dogs are portrayed by people. Like honestly, when they
suits,
when they get to the 2 guys in the horse, and you can see the guy's face.
I forgot about the horse.
Yeah, the horse
that
guy.
bit was great.
Yeah, I want it just like that, where you can see the person's face.
When the native tries to ride the horse, oh my god, it was so good.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I feel like sometimes does it protrude, like slapstick can protrude into other genres, and it's funny because it's inappropriate. Like I imagine like a Double Indemnity type story that has slapstick in it. I assume
crazy
you're
about you, baby.
Yeah, you're approaching like Zucker Brothers territory where you're doing like dumb puns and whatever, but to have like a hard-boiled detective who just can't seem to not be clumsy would be kind of funny, at least for something. So there's some bit there. I just don't know how long you can actually ride that, how much mileage you get out of it.
Yeah.
When you're not doing.
John, you need to watch Chinatown.
Is that hilarious?
There are a lot of funny bits in it, and there's a lot of like well-meaning detective fucking up repeatedly. Yeah,
he's not very good at his job.
Sasha, you got to watch this. Dixon told me it's a comedy. It's really funny.
There are definitely moments where you will laugh.
Departed style laughing. Like, maybe not. Maybe fuck yourself.
Yeah, I think if they did that, it was just new, right? Like doing this like silent slapstick thing. Yeah, I think that's probably
like
spent. But if they
the Sims version of
pick
like
something
slapstick.
Else and
the Wilhelm
and keep up with the slapstick. Yeah,
for sure.
And it is the mix of bits that works here too, right? Like we talked about the payoffs. There's the non sequiturs. There's a lot of the you see something and then you jump cut right to the next thing that then makes it funny with them being next to each other. You mentioned the rabbits. He comes across the 2 children rabbits and he looks at him like, oh, they're so cute, and then you jump cut to the two rabbits over the
roasting over
fire.
a fire.
Right, like it's that kind of comedy that you put those together. There are other, like, one of the things I don't, for whatever reason, I found it like absolutely hilarious was when he's trying to pick up the coin the first time he gets the coin.
Yeah.
And it's one of those like examples of like where it stops being funny and then comes back around to being funny. Because normally you'd be like, oh, he tries to pick it up like 3 times and it's funny, right? This sort of comedy in threes. But then he keeps going enough that it sort of stops being funny. But then it keeps going to where it's hilarious because it's gone on enough.
Yeah.
I thought the scenes with the merchant too were funny to me, and kind of the absurdity of early capitalism, you know, where it's just like why do we even have currency here? It's like he comes and brings however many carcasses he has, and the guy gives him money, and then that amount of money buys the stuff, and it's just like why aren't we just trading goods here? Like, what is the point?
He like picks up the 2 coins and puts them back down immediately.
Right.
Like,
oh, that's what I can buy. Sure, I'll buy that thing. Yeah.
I also loved the gag about the jumps between sexuality, like what is sexual, because they have like the daughter and she shows her exposed ankle, which is a very Victorian era thing. And then immediately she's just on a pole, like spinning around it, doing pole dancing. And then
while
he comes
her
over
father is just around the corner, can't see what she's doing.
Comes around and they're doing patty cake, which, hey, Who Framed Roger Rabbit did a patty cake joke that's a similar kind of sexual thing. And there you go. It's all connected. Yeah. Ryan, was there any other question or topic you want to talk about?
I think we just talk about gags, I feel like. I also like the...
all right, put a timer on the clock.
Another event when I felt like the snowman, when he sets up the snowman to fish for him.
The one that does the hands.
And then like the first snowman he sets up, the fish grabs the rod and pulls it out of the snowman. Yep. And he goes back and it cuts away and he has made a buff snowman. And then it's like, then of course the rod gets pulled away again anyway. But like that was a funny new, like, okay. The stuff he did with the snowman, I also liked, he makes a snowman dog. Like he's sitting there and he's getting lonely and he makes like a snowman wife and a snowman dog. And he throws a stick and the dog doesn't get it. And he gets like
mad
pissed.
about it. Yeah.
I kept picturing during that sequence that he's like reacting to the snowman or dog and then going back and changing their faces and stuff and then coming back and having his side of the conversation and then going back around.
There is, I think that's one more nugget of slapstick and of that humor, not even slapstick, but like Looney Tunes and what makes it magical. Like the humor in Looney Tunes, the humor in cartoons in general, is there's like that extra level of like a childlike logic, like a very simplified, oh, of course, this would work this way. If my snowman can't hold a fishing rod, a buff snowman can. Like those moments they just fill me with joy to see that somebody out there is also thinking that same initial thought and then being like, that's dumb. I got to make that happen. So good.
Well, I think that you mentioned Wile E. Coyote. One of the things that's interesting about Wile E. Coyote, and it still works. We're talking about comedy that like still works. They're able to set up something. You have a certain expectation, but the way that they pay off is also one of those like, okay, yeah, I can see it. So, you know, it's like he'll chop down a tree, but instead of the tree falling, the rest of the world falls.
Yeah.
And it's like the physics concept's the same, but it's completely inverted to it to a kid, right? It's funny because you're like, oh, I know that doesn't work there, but it does make sense. Like, like why is it that happens instead of this happening? Or like, yeah, he gets into a slingshot and inevitably like something else gets
a tunnel on a wall, and
there is a tunnel on a wall gag in this that I don't want to give away because it is kind of like a big point in the movie, but it's really funny the way that works.
But yeah, well, anything else? Do we miss anything?
I mean, it's hard to go through and not just like talk about like
things.
We missed hundreds of gags.
It's not possible to recite them all.
There will be them playing taps while the beavers carry away the gigantic ball of beaver pelts. Just great.
Yeah.
We didn't even talk about. We mentioned the trial. We didn't talk about the trial. and how fantastic it is that suddenly there's a beaver society that just happens out of nowhere. But
certainly after we get
So
through like
good,
all the
yeah.
gags of like every possible Looney Tune,
it-
something falling on you, something
evolves.
dropping, something stepped on. Yeah, it evolves into this like absurdist beaver society. And again, the ability to have something silent, but you know exactly what's going on. Like the lawyer beaver is the prosecutor does exactly the like, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Like,
yes,
you
he's
can
got
tell.
the fucking suspenders.
Yeah, and he has the
I'm just a
suspenders.
simple beaver.
Like, absolutely hilarious. And somehow like the technology that the beavers have, I like the touch too of like it's all wooden. Kind of works. Like a child building something out of wood kind of works. Ideas, yeah.
Just great.
I love his defense attorney. Like, he's like, don't worry, I got this, buddy. And stands up and just eats shit right away. Like, falls on the floor. Stands up, just clearly out of his element. He's like the, fresh out of law school public defender that doesn't know what he's doing. And,
I mean, I want to see more of this Beaver Society. I would love to watch. Okay, they could go one more place, and that is to have shorts. Now they can have shorts. They don't have feature-length things, but if they had shorts, I would watch them. It becomes an Elmer Fudd, Bugs Bunny situation with the beavers and the trapper and like whatever. That's the only other place I could see it going.
yeah.
But yeah. Well, I'm all talked out on it.
I know.
The gags, I don't want to spoil more of them. I feel like we should get to the recommending.
Yep,
I was going to say refuting, but it's honestly just the recommending, right?
No, we should wrap it up. I think, you probably already know where we're going. Like, I absolutely recommend this. Yeah, same. My first thought was I need to call my dad and tell him to drop everything. Watch this because he'll find it hilarious. I'll say initially I was trying to decide whether or not to watch this with my family.
Yep.
And I usually go and look up things, and
right.
I think so.
Some jokes.
I will say there were.
meh.
There were some off-color jokes with, as we mentioned, well-endowed snow women,
rabbit sex,
and some like rabbit sex. But
There's
I was kind
a
of like,
snow woman that turns into a snowman.
yeah. And the lady gets on a stripper pole for like a fraction of a minute.
Hey, that's valid exercise.
Yeah, but I'm also like, we watched Airplane, and there's a whole set of gags about them getting like porno mags.
There's that scene where the woman jumps with her boobs out right in front of the camera.
Right. Yeah. Right. So I'm like, I've already kind of like, I've already kind of ruined that potential. And I don't think that these are bad in any way. Like, it's sort of like,
they're cheeky.
It's fine. It's cheeky. Yeah, you get it. My son's certainly old enough. My daughter just kind of like hand wave of like, she's already learning what society is anyway. And some of these,
she was on
some of
this
these things are there.
podcast. She's had some life experiences.
Yeah.
She had some hot takes about Encanto.
Exactly. We were re-listening to it, and she was pointing out that I was the only one that cussed.
That's true. I told you.
You're the only one that tripped up.
We were having a good time with the edit. I will say, when we were talking about Hercules, and I was like, oh, that's the only way you could do like all that shit.
Yeah.
It leaked, and I was like, that's the way I would have described it at home. And my family was in the car, and they're all like, yeah, that's what Dad would have said.
Vindicated.
I actually think, I think I will rewatch this.
He's just fucking with him. I don't know how else to say it. Like, your daughter is sitting right next to you. John and I were like, oh my God, he did it.
Yeah, I can't believe he did it. I didn't say one swear. Dixon had to. He's contractually obligated to
I
end
did
this
at the
episode
very
with
end
a
of the
swear.
episode, but
Yeah. We do it like they do movies where we covered her ears and you took your own take. No.
Right, yes.
Yeah, no, that's the only way to describe what the chameleon kid was doing as well. I mean, that's exactly what he was doing. No, so I do think that I will watch this again with my family. I'm not sure what Darla's impressions are of it, but though she likes slapstick, like she's going to come and go on this movie. Some of it's like too absurd and she'll be like, but then some of it is just like he straight up hits his nuts into a pole and then slowly slides down it. That she'll find
for like
absolutely
15
hilarious.
Yeah, so good.
Yes. I'm going to watch this again with my family. Totally going to recommend it to my dad. Like, absolutely across the board. People should know about this movie. They should watch it. This should have a groundswell of people finding out about it and going and watching it.
You can also rent it for $3 on Amazon. Like it's pretty low bar to be able to watch this thing.
Yeah.
Apparently, I signed up for some service called Fandor. I've never heard of that, and they just let me watch it for free, along with Inspector Ike, which I already have. But I guess they're an indie comedy service of some kind. They have a 7-day trial. You can check it out there if you want to. We're not sponsored by Fandor, okay? I just happened to stumble
Those
upon
fuckers refused to sponsor us. We begged them. They wouldn't do it.
Yet again, another name to add to the list.
Yeah, so they're sitting there like, what?
Yeah.
They like, actually listen, and you blew it. John, do you recommend Hundreds of Beavers?
I recommend Hundreds of Beavers. The movie. Don't go seeking out Hundreds of Beavers because beavers are very different in real life. Okay, I just want to lay that out there.
I don't know. This is very similar to my real life experiences with beavers.
Yeah, I half expected.
They'll gather around and kick your ass.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I will report back when I watch the pornographic equivalent, Hundreds of Beavers, which is the same name. It's fine. It'll be in 3D. It's part of the box set that Dixon got me for my birthday, I'm sure.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Thank you for the 3D nudie cuties, Dixon. You know me so well.
John, I couldn't imagine giving you anything else.
It's just the gift that keeps on giving to only one person and nobody else should know about it. But yes, I recommend Hundreds of Beavers. It's a delightful time.
And Dixon?
Hell yes, I recommend Hundreds of Beavers. As I mentioned, it's my second favorite movie of the year so far. It's really, really good. It's just a hell of a time. I think one thing we didn't mention that I want to call out briefly is the mascot work is just really creative and really good. Like whenever they kill a beaver or a rabbit or a raccoon, all of a sudden the eyes turn to X's and they stay that way for the rest of that character's existence. And like I love when he takes in, a dead beaver, a dead raccoon and gives it to the trader, and his daughter just like cuts it open with a knife and pulls out like stuffed intestines and like a plush heart and stuff. And just so, and the main character's like barfing on the side while she's pulling out these plush intestines. Like it's just so creatively done in every facet of the filmmaking.
So much thought put in.
Highly, highly recommend Hundreds of Beavers.
Absolutely. Yep. All right. That's a complete recommend all the way around on double that. It's you should go watch it. Drop everything.
I'm sure there's like hundreds of recommends on this.
Yes, hundreds of recommends. All right. Well, that will bring us to a close. Some of us are going to go rewatch it. We'll let you know. I've been your host, Ryan King. Joining me as always,
John Garcia. And just for the record, his name is Mike Cheslick. I don't know. I think that's what Mike's name is, and I
believe that is correct.
I did it, everybody. Mike and I are buddies, and sometimes I call him Chris, but, hey, whatever.
Who hasn't called someone they know really well the wrong name? Come on.
I've called you Brian plenty of times. Anyways, back to you, Brian.
And also...
Michael Dixon, thanks for putting up with our bullshit.
Hey there, movie buffs, TV toughs, and all listeners in between. John here from the Afterthoughts podcast. I just wanted to drop in at the end of this episode and say thanks for listening. If you've got afterthoughts of your own to share, hit us up. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at The Afterpod, or jump into a conversation on our Discord server. You can find info for this and more at theafterpod.transistor.fm. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.